You see, for my entire life, Dr. Evelyn and Dr. Richard Wells, my parents, measured success in sutures, status, and six-figure salaries. They used their medical degrees like shields and swords, building a fortress of high society privilege. And when I chose a path they deemed lesser, they didn't just disapprove. They cut me off, branding me as the poor, unworthy daughter. They thought my life was a cautionary tale they could safely ignore. They thought they were untouchable. They thought wrong. Because while they were busy playing God with people's health and wealth inside their prestigious clinic, they never bothered to read the fine print on the entire hospital system's ownership. The fine print that had my name on it. And when their arrogance put the life of the man I loved at risk, I didn't just expose them. I dismantled their perfect world, piece by excruciating piece. The scent of antiseptic and polished mahogany. That was the smell of my childhood. Not cookies baking or fresh-cut grass, but the sterile, expensive air of the Aurora Medical Group, the private facility where my mother, Dr. Evelyn Wells, reigned as a celebrated cardiothoracic surgeon, and my father, Dr. Richard Wells, held the position of chief of staff and part owner. They were medical royalty in our affluent suburb of Chicago, their lives a meticulously curated tableau of wealth, skill, and breathtaking arrogance. I was Ariana Ari Wells, their only child, and from the moment I could talk, my future was mapped out. Medical school, residency at a top-tier hospital, and eventually, a coveted spot in their practice. But I saw the toxicity behind the titles. I saw how they treated nurses, administrators, and most crucially, patients who didn't come with platinum-tier insurance or an influential last name. They didn't save lives. They managed assets. When I was 20, the inevitable clash happened. I was in my junior year at Northwestern, not in pre-med, but in business administration, focusing on health tech and logistics. I tried to explain my passion for systemic change, for making the healthcare infrastructure efficient and accessible. Efficiency is for janitors, Ariana, my mother drawled, stirring her $15 latte during one of our mandated Sunday brunches. Her tailored suit was sharper than any scalpel. Our practice is built on exclusivity. We are the elite. You belong here, operating on the elite, not shuffling paperwork for the masses. I want to run the system, mother. I countered, my voice barely shaking. I want to fix the broken business models. My father, Richard, leaned back, his face a mask of disappointment. Fix it. Ari dear, you sound like a socialist idealist. You're wasting your intellect on logistics when you could be earning $500,000 a year by 30. I gave you the Wells name, the best education, the connections. You throw it all away for spreadsheets. He made the word sound like an infectious disease. That was the night I realized their love was purely conditional. Conditional on me fitting into their gold-plated box. I refused to let them dictate my worth. I finished my degree, graduated top of my class, and in a fit of pride and pain, I moved out of the city, taking an entry-level job in Silicon Valley. I cut contact almost entirely. For the next 8 years, I became someone else. Ari Wells, the entrepreneur. I didn't chase operating rooms. I chased investment rounds. My focus on efficiency and innovative medical logistics paid off spectacularly. My company, Ascend Healthcare Solutions, didn't offer flashy procedures. We offered smarter, leaner, and more effective management of large-scale hospital networks. By the time I was 28, Ascend was a multi-billion-dollar entity, and I was its fiercely private CEO, operating mostly in the background, far from the media glare. My greatest coup, and the key to my eventual revenge, was the acquisition of the entire United Care Consortium, a massive network of regional hospitals. The sale was complex, shrouded in shell corporations and investment trusts, making my personal ownership nearly untraceable to the casual observer. It was a perfect cold irony. The Aurora Medical Group, my parents' beloved, prestigious clinic, was an affiliate member of the UCC network. My parents worked in a facility that, at the highest legal level, I owned. They had no idea. I kept my distance and maintained a facade of modest success. When I finally returned to Chicago 2 years ago, I didn't flaunt my wealth. I drove an expensive but understated car, bought a comfortable but not ostentatious condo, and told my few acquaintances that I was a high-level consultant in the health sector. This discretion was partly for business security, but mostly, It was a necessary shield against my parents. If they knew the truth, they'd swallow me whole. Then there was Ethan. Ethan Martin. Ethan was the antithesis of everything my parents valued. A kind, brilliant high school history teacher who painted gorgeous, abstract art on the side. He exuded warmth and genuine compassion. He was my anchor. He knew my past, but he loved me for who I was, not for my growing secret empire. He certainly wasn't rich. His health insurance was standard, union-negotiated coverage, the kind my parents openly sneered at. I had kept my secret from Ethan too, partially. He knew I was successful, but he thought I was comfortably well off, not secretive majority stakeholder of a multi-hospital system. I planned to tell him everything once we were married, but I cherished our life away from the gilded cage of my professional existence. Last Thanksgiving, I made the mistake of inviting my parents to my condo to announce our engagement. It was a disaster. A scene etched into my memory with painful clarity. A high school teacher, Ariana? My mother said, her voice dripping with surgical precision as she inspected the simple, elegant ring Ethan had given me. An artist? Does he even have a decent retirement plan? Really, darling, after everything we gave you, we expected a partner with status. A doctor. A lawyer. Someone who understands the meaning of generational wealth. My father simply looked at Ethan with open pity. Look, son, we appreciate your effort. But you must understand. You and Ari live in completely different financial stratospheres. Our practice requires exclusivity. We entertain the mayor, the senator, the top financiers. Ariana belongs in that world. You would only hold her back. Ethan, bless his patient heart, simply smiled tightly. I love Ari, Dr. Wells. That's my only concern. Well, love doesn't pay for the right insurance plan, does it? Evelyn snapped, putting down her champagne glass with a sharp click. You're simply too poor for her, Ethan. And certainly too poor for our family circle. I exploded. Get out. Both of you. Right now. I screamed the words that had been building for 10 years. You are judging the kindest, most intelligent man I have ever met based on his paycheck. You are a disgrace to humanity, let alone medicine. They left, haughty and unrepentant. That night, I cried in Ethan's arms, but beneath the pain, a cold, crystalline resolve formed. This wasn't just about their snobbery. It was about their fundamental corruption of values. Then the true catalyst struck. 3 months ago, Ethan collapsed during a community fundraising event. A sudden, terrifying seizure. We rushed him to the nearest emergency room, which by cruel fate, was St. Jude's, an affiliate of the United Care Consortium, a mile down the road from the Aurora Medical Group. The ER doctor determined it was a severe, complex neurological event. They needed an immediate consultation with a top specialist. I immediately thought of my father, Richard, who specialized in neurological diagnostics and held privileges at the nearby Aurora Clinic. I called him, desperate and terrified. I withheld the truth about my wealth, and simply played the role of the frantic fiancé. Dad, it's Ari. It's Ethan. He's at St. Jude's ER. He needs a consult, it's serious. Can you pull some strings, see him? Immediately. My voice cracked. There was a pause on the line, long and chilling. St. Jude's? That's the public-facing arm of UCC. Ariana, you know I only handle private consultations now. The clientele there, they're simply not our demographic. He's dying. Dad. He's right here. Don't be dramatic. Look, have the St. Jude's doctor send his insurance and full medical history to the Aurora Administrative Office. If his coverage, the plan, is adequate, and I highly doubt that teacher's plan is, then perhaps Dr. Thompson can slot him in for a secondary review next week. But I am not driving across town for an emergency consult on a charity case. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. You're a doctor. He needs you now. I am a partner at a premium facility. We have standards, Ari. You know the rules. He's not financially viable for us. The line went dead. That was the line. Not just the snobbery, but the medical negligence. They prioritized their bank accounts and prestige over a human life, even one intimately connected to me. The fire of revenge that had been simmering for a decade turned into white-hot magma. I did not let Ethan wait for them. I made one call to my chief operations officer, a brilliant man named Marcus, who understood the coded language of emergency executive action. Within 20 minutes, Ethan was airlifted to a top private hospital in another state, the best specialists were flown in, and the entire procedure was paid for by a benevolent anonymous donor, i.e. me. Ethan received the life-saving surgery he needed. While Ethan was in recovery, the wheels of my retribution began to spin, cold and precise. I returned to Chicago and activated my legal and executive teams. I needed a reason to not just fire them, but to legally strip them of their influence, their dignity, and their assets. The first twist, I knew something they didn't. 2 years prior, during my acquisition of UCC, my team had uncovered a deeply buried financial discrepancy involving the Aurora Medical Group. Dr. Richard Wells, in his role as Chief of Staff, had quietly been approving excessively high charges for certain equipment leases, channeling the difference through a shell company controlled by his friend. It was minor fraud, but it was a clear violation of UCC's, and therefore, my ethical and financial codes. At the time, I filed it away, deciding to clean it up quietly. Now it was a weapon. I scheduled an emergency mandatory network executive strategy meeting at the main UCC corporate headquarters, a sterile, ultramodern tower downtown. I demanded the attendance of the entire administrative board of the Aurora Medical Group, including its chief of staff and key partners, Dr. Richard and Dr. Evelyn Wells. I had arranged for the entire meeting to be recorded, a live feed piped discreetly to my COO's office and the legal team. I walked into the massive, glass-walled conference room dressed in an impeccably tailored, dark suit, a uniform of absolute power. My hair was pulled back tightly, my expression frozen in professional neutrality. My parents were already there, chatting with the administrators, looking supremely confident. They saw me, their consultant daughter, and their faces registered mild surprise and slight annoyance. "Ariana, what are you doing here?" my mother asked, her tone dismissive. "This is an executive meeting. Surely your consulting firm has another room." My father, Richard, waved a hand impatiently. "Yes, dear. Go check on the refreshments. Your mother and I have important business to discuss with the network executives." I didn't answer them. I walked to the head of the impossibly long table and stood there, arms folded. A silence fell as Marcus, my COO, entered the room and took the seat beside me, adjusting a small microphone on the table. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, my voice clear and carrying, devoid of any daughterly warmth. "Thank you for attending this unscheduled review of the Aurora Medical Group's operations." Richard huffed. "Review? Ari, this is highly irregular. Who exactly authorized this ambush?" I paused, looking directly at my father. The contempt I felt was a physical weight. "I did, Richard." I used his first name. His eyes narrowed. "I called this meeting because an incident was brought to my attention recently that violates several core tenets of the United Care Consortium's patient care and ethics policy," I continued, ignoring his mounting indignation. "A life-threatening medical emergency involving a highly valued member of my immediate family was mishandled by the Aurora leadership, specifically by 2 key individuals who prioritized financial viability over the oath they swore." Evelyn scoffed. "If this is about some poor associate whose insurance didn't cover his procedure, Ari, this is not your concern. We are a private practice." "It is entirely my concern, Evelyn," I said, finally using my mother's first name, the sound of it like a hammer blow, because the poor associate was Ethan Martin, my fiancé. The room froze. My parents paled, their confidence instantly deflating. "And it is my concern," I continued, leaning in, "because the 2 individuals who refused him immediate consultation and instead lectured me on his financial viability were you too." Richard stood up, stammering. "Ariana, this is highly inappropriate. You cannot use this forum for a personal grievance." "Oh, but I can," I said, a slow, predatory smile finally touching my lips. I pulled up a document on the massive display screen behind me. The title flashed, UCC Code of Conduct Violation, Gross Negligence and Financial Misappropriation. "Let's move past the ethical breach, shall we? Because that alone would merely cost you your privileges," I said, my voice now steel. "Let's discuss something more serious, fraud." I began detailing the excessive equipment lease charges, the shell company accounts, the signatures. Richard's face turned the color of surgical scrubs. The other administrators were staring at their feet. "This is ridiculous," Evelyn shrieked. "A conspiracy. Ari, you have no authority here." I let out a short, cold laugh. This was the moment. "I think you'll find, Mother, that I have all the authority here." I pressed a button on my tablet, and the screen flashed to the corporate organizational chart of the United Care Consortium. A single, large box at the very top, labeled Controlling Interest, contained one name, Ascend Healthcare Solutions. And under that, in bold type, Ariana Wells, CEO and majority shareholder. The silence in the room was deafening. Richard dropped back into his chair, as if the air had been knocked out of him. Evelyn looked like she had just been struck by lightning. "The UCC network, and by extension, your highly exclusive, highly profitable Little Aurora Medical Group, is mine," I stated, my voice ringing with finality. "Every surgical suite, every expensive piece of equipment, every contract, belongs to a company I founded and control. I own the building you are standing in, and I own the building where you practice." I paused for dramatic effect, letting the reality crush them. "You worried that Ethan was too poor to be in your medical practice? You are now employees of the woman you deem too poor to be your daughter." "Effective immediately," I announced, turning to Marcus, who nodded briskly. "Dr. Evelyn Wells and Dr. Richard Wells are stripped of all medical privileges within the United Care Consortium. All partnership agreements are terminated due to gross ethical misconduct and documented financial fraud." "You can't do this," my father choked out, his eyes wild. "Our retirement. Our shares. We built that practice." "You built it on arrogance and selective care," I corrected him, pulling up the final document. The third twist. "And father, due to the specific clauses in the UCC partnership agreement regarding ethical breaches that affect the financial integrity of the network, your entire accrued share of the practice, along with any vested pension, is subject to forfeiture to cover the costs of the internal audit and subsequent legal cleanup of your fraud. The lawyers will contact you. You walk away with nothing but your medical licenses, which incidentally, I recommend you hold on to tightly." I watched as the weight of 30 years of their snobbery, their entitlement, and their medical hubris came crashing down. They weren't just fired. They were professionally neutered and financially ruined. "Security will escort you out," I finished, picking up my tablet. "This meeting is adjourned." I didn't watch them leave. The look on their faces, the shock, the realization, the absolute terror, was all the satisfaction I needed. Later that week, I was sitting with Ethan, who was recovering beautifully, telling him the full story of my professional life, finally unburdening myself. He listened patiently, smiling warmly. "You risked your life for this," he murmured, gently taking my hand. "No, Ethan," I corrected him, squeezing his hand tightly. "They risked your life for their arrogance. I simply collected the debt." My parents lost everything. Their reputation was shredded in the medical community. The fraud was covered up internally to protect the UCC brand, but their abrupt, unexplained departure and financial ruin sent a clear message. They were forced to sell their mansion and now live a life of painful, unfamiliar modesty. I never spoke to them again. I didn't need to. I had taken their power, their status, and their security. I had corrected a fatal flaw in the system they created. The flaw that allowed them to believe they were above accountability. I was no longer the poor, unworthy daughter. I was the silent, unstoppable force that had finally, justly, brought the House of Wells down. And with Ethan by my side, I finally felt rich in the only currency that ever truly mattered.